a.m. Pacific with the rebroadcast on Sunday at noon.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protesting anthems, yes, we chanting. A movement of people, it's like we dancing to the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the power's even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the point where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify. With you and God in time, my best align.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and Chief White House Correspondent. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is March 26, 2025, and we've got you covered in afternoon drive time in LA. And if you're leaving the office or wherever you are a little bit later on the East Coast, we got you covered too. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, because Dr. Nii-Quartelai can be a lot of vowels and just a lot of letters for a lot of people. And so if you just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, I pop right on up. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. And subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast powered by KBLA Talk 1580 to never miss an episode. Now, it's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. Kicking us off, NBC News is reporting that President Trump's at it again. Trump has imposed a 25% tariff on all automobiles and foreign auto parts brought into the United States. He made this declaration at the White House today, but later clarified that foreign auto parts would also be taxed at the 25% rate, even if the cars they go into are assembled in the United States. However, companies that import vehicles under the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement will receive special consideration until the Commerce Department establishes a new process for levying the 25% duties. That's what the White House has said. The United States-Mexico-Canada agreement compliant automobile parts will remain tariff-free until the Secretary of Commerce, in consultation with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, establishes a process to apply tariffs to their non-U.S. content. It kind of makes you wonder, well, if you weren't ready to make them effective right away, then why did you announce it? Was it the shock value of it all? They enjoy keeping us all on our toes. Trump said that he expects auto companies to relocate to the United States and build new sites or expand existing ones. He hit out at the companies that have opened facilities in Canada and Mexico in recent decades. And what he said was the expense of what he said was, not so shocking to those of us that cover him day to day. He said, quotes, "If you build your car in the U.S., there's no tariff." He said that tariffs would go into effect April 2nd and would be permanent. He said the United States would end up collecting as much as $100 billion from tariff revenue. You can imagine what the stock market did today. Shares of top U.S. automakers fell sharply in after-hours trading on the announcement. That's why the White House officials later clarified that foreign components would also be taxed, even if the cars were assembled here in the United States. 8, count them, 8 of the top 10 most American vehicles whose parts are sourced and assembled, where the parts are sourced and the assembly are undertaken here in the United States, I should say, are actually foreign-owned companies, according to car.com. And so who knows? Who knows what effect this is going to have? Who knows if this thing is really going to take effect, or if it really is a bargaining chip to force people to the table to give the administration what they really want. But thought you should know that, in case you were thinking about maybe getting a new car or fixing up a used car that you already have. This is important stuff to know. Moving along, the Supreme Court upholds a Biden rule requiring serial numbers and background checks for ghost guns. This is a big deal. This is a big deal because we know that gun violence touches so many of our families, so many of our communities across the country, and ghost guns are not going to monitor themselves. And this is something that the Biden administration really fought hard for. And here we have it. NPR reporting that the U.S. Supreme Court today upheld a Biden era federal regulation that essentially bans manufacturers from selling so-called ghost guns. These are build-it-yourself gun kits, mainly bought online, that include all the parts of a gun but are untraceable because guess what? When assembled, they have no serial numbers. In 2022, as ghost guns became more and more of a problem, particularly for law enforcement, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, they enacted this new rule classifying these kits as firearms under the 1968 Gun Control Act. Because before that, they were not classified as firearms. That law defines a firearm as any weapon that is designed to or may readily be converted into a functional firearm. Gun manufacturers promptly challenged the new regulation, contending that a bunch of gun parts is not a gun. But the Supreme Court, by a 7-2 vote, they upheld the regulation. Writing for the majority, Justice Neil Gorsuch said that under the broad language of the 1968 Gun Control Act, the ATF was well within its authority in requiring those who make or sell gun kits to mark their products with serial numbers, keep records of their sales, and conduct background checks on buyers. This will definitely go a long way towards keeping us all the more safer. It definitely will go a long way in terms of tracing these ghost guns, because that's why they're called ghost guns, because you can't trace them. They don't have any serial numbers. And so this is a good thing, a very good thing. Moving along, we know that we've had a number of founders of Black-owned brands on this show, and we'll continue to have founders and entrepreneurs on the show. But the Griot is reporting that founders of Black-owned brands are adapting their hopes and business plans for a post-DEI era. That's what's happening. Co-founders of a company that makes lip products for dark skin tones no longer hopes to get their line into Target, unfortunately. A brother and sister who make jigsaw puzzles celebrating Black subjects wonder if they need to offer neutral images like landscape to keep growing. Pound cake and puzzles of color are among the small businesses whose owners are rethinking their plans as major U.S. companies weaken their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. The initiatives mostly date from the end of President Trump's first term, and entered a new era with the dawn of his second one. Some Black-owned brands suspect big retail chains will drop partnerships that they pursued after the police killing of a Black man in 2020 reignited mass protests against racial injustice. In today's anti-DEI climate, other entrepreneurs worry about personal repercussions or feel pressure to cancel contracts with retreating retailers. And so how do you feel about that? There are a number of people who said, look, I may feel some kind of way about Target or Walmart or said retailer. We're not picking on anyone. But, you know, are you willing to support these brands, you know, by seeking them out, you know, going to their websites, looking them up on Instagram? You know, can these brands survive independently of major retailers? This is a part of the test. This isn't just about the DEI efforts of big retailers, right? This is about reimagining opportunities for distribution for independent businesses, for small businesses. It's about creating a marketplace, a new and different marketplace, growing the socially conscious marketplace, if you will. And so we're going to continue to keep our eye on stories of entrepreneurs that are doing that are finding ways to scale, even in light of the barrage of headlines we're hearing about this movement against all things diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we come forward, we're switching gears a little bit. I'm really excited to be in conversation with Dr. Wylin D. Wilson. She is assistant professor of theological ethics at Duke Divinity School, where she teaches with the Theology, Medicine, and Culture Initiative. I've never really imagined those disciplines all linked together. And she is teaching and researching at the intersection of bioethics, gender, and theology. Where have you ever heard that before? Well, she has a new book called Womanistic Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health. It just came out early this year. We're going to learn all about that and the phenomenal work she's doing on the front lines in academia and beyond. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
The revolution will not be televised.
What's up? It is Killer Mike, also known as Michael Render, and I'm encouraging you to listen to more, not less, of Truth Time with Dr. Cornel West and Senator Nina Turner on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With the Capital One Venture X card, you earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. Plus, you get premium benefits at a collection of luxury hotels when you book on Capital One Travel. And with Venture X, you get access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. Open up a world of travel possibilities with the Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
As we go a little something like this.
Hey, it is me, D.L. Hughley, and I am thrilled to be heard weekdays in my hometown on KBLA Talk 1580. So check out the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. We got a whole lot to talk about, let me tell you. That's like a real.
Hit me! National News The Consequence. Informed opinion. And analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai and delighted to welcome Dr. Wylin D. Wilson. She is the Assistant Professor of Theological Ethics at Duke Divinity School. But that's not it. She is also a member of the Society for the Study of Black Religion. Who knew there was a study for Black religion? We're going to find out all about it. She's also with the American Society of Bioethics and Humanity and the American Academy of Religion. And she has this new book that's out that we've got to pick up. It just came out earlier this year. It's called Womanistic Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health. Welcome to the show, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you so much. It is just wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here, and it's even wonderful to learn from your body of work. Let's start with this book that's out that people are buzzing about. It's called Womanistic Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health. What made you string those disciplines together under the heading of Womanistic Bioethics?
Yes. So there are two important components of what's behind this book, right? One of it is that I was born about 10 years after the desegregation of hospitals. And so hospitals were desegregated around about 1964. And so as I was growing up, I was hearing so many horror stories from family members and other members of African-American community where I was, and church members, just horror stories about the interaction of African-Americans with the healthcare system. And what a deadly combination it is when you have race and health in a society that had really and truly, particularly had segregation, even in medical facilities. That was one reason. But then the second reason was I also did some work in rural Tuskegee, Alabama, and Tuskegee is right in the heart of the Alabama Black Belt, right there, and the Tuskegee National Forest, like really beautiful but rural area. And being in a rural community, working in a rural community, really, really taught me just how difficult it is when it comes to healthcare and poverty and African Americans facing all of the being underserved, and particularly in rural areas where we have witnessed so many hospital closings in the U.S.
And I would imagine that your book is also pulling from the COVID era, where we saw so many more examples of, sort of the thesis of your book, no?
Yes, definitely. I do talk about rural African Americans and rural health, and looking at the fact that in a lot of rural communities, many women who are pregnant, they have to travel an hour or more just to deliver their baby. And when hospital budgets get tight, the obstetrical unit is usually the first to go. And the maternal mortality rate is higher in rural areas, and rural hospitals, of course, being economic drivers, right, in these areas, because they're small communities and not a lot of economic opportunities there. And so in addition to talking about that, I definitely talk about maternal mortality, African American women's maternal mortality. But yeah, these hospitals, about almost 20 hospitals across the nation in rural areas closed down just in 2020 alone. So at a time when, my goodness, during the pandemic, we really needed our healthcare systems, particularly for underserved populations like folks in rural America.
I mean, where our home station is located in Los Angeles, and not very far away, there's Martin Luther King Medical Center. And once upon a time, that medical center almost shut down. And I remember the leadership of folks like then Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, and very few elected officials at the time said, wait a minute, we can't let this happen, and got creative in working with a coalition of people to keep it open and reimagine it. And then the pandemic hit. And so oftentimes I think, wow, if not for the leadership of folks like Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, and other folks who understood how critical it was, to have a hospital in a predominantly Black and Brown community.
Yes.
I feared that the COVID pandemic deaths would have been far worse if you didn't have medical facilities like that. And where King Medical Center is, it's an urban area, and so this story only gets worse in rural America.
Yes, and that's the thing. We talk about rural America, but also when we look at our urban areas, the statistics come so close as well, right? So when we are trying to make policy changes for urban areas, for rural areas, it is so significant. And what it's doing is pushing back on what I talk about in my book is the normalization of Black suffering, right? It really pushes back on that. And that's something that, the normalization of Black suffering started, of course, during slavery, right? And unfortunately, we are so desensitized to it. It's almost as if, people talk about something being common. Just because it's common doesn't make it normal, right? It is common that we suffer health disparities, right? It is common that we are underserved population when it comes to healthcare, but it's not normal. And unfortunately, even within our communities, it's looked at as something that is normal. And I really believe that is something that's pervasive, and it still is affecting, all areas: policy, healthcare, economics, all areas.
Yeah. And talking about the normalization of Black suffering, I can't help but think about what appears to be very severe looming cuts to Medicaid. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about these likely cuts, $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid, who that impacts, and how that impact is written about in your book.
So one of the things that I think is really important when we talk about these kinds of issues, there's so much division in our nation, right? And so usually when people think about cuts, right, that are going to happen, and when we think about policies that are put in place, and it looks like it's only going to affect one segment of our population, what's really awful about that is that we're not looking at the fact that, oh, there is going to be a spillover effect, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to spill over, so it doesn't just affect African Americans. It affects Native American, Indigenous and Pacific Islander folk in our nation. We often forget about our Native American brothers, sisters, and siblings here in the U.S. In fact, the maternal mortality rate for our American Indian women is as bad as African American women's maternal mortality rate, and in some instances even worse. But it's another thing, right? The normalization of the suffering of minoritized individuals in this nation. And so I think what's so significant is that it is pervasive. These cuts are pervasive. It's going to affect the elderly, right? It's going to affect children. I mean, just the spillover is just astronomical, quite frankly. And so that's why for me it was really important to write this book, because I really feel that in order for us to have an adequate understanding of what justice means in human relations, right, it requires us to start with the needs of the most vulnerable among us, right?
Yeah.
It
does. I want to pick up on that point when we come forward. I oftentimes say on the show, particularly in a time such as this, we can feed the fear or feed our imagination. We can't do both. I want to talk to you about how your book is not just challenging our assumptions, but how it's feeding our imaginations in a time such as this. We are live with Dr. Wylin Wilson, author of Womanistic Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health. More when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you've tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIA News. A Republican lawmaker is moving to censor Black U.S. Rep. Jasmine Crockett for calling Texas Governor Greg Abbott Governor Hot Wheels at a human rights campaign gala. Abbott, who uses a wheelchair, was paralyzed at 26. Crockett denies the comment was about his disability. President Trump is asking the Supreme Court to freeze state grants aimed at reducing teacher shortages, claiming the funds are being used for DEI programs. It's part of his crackdown on DEI during his second term. Black Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown joined 18 other states in urging a federal court to block the Trump administration's end to temporary protected status for Venezuelans and Haitians. Over 27,000 in Maryland could face deportation. And services have been set for former U.S. Congresswoman Mia Love, who passed away after battling brain cancer. Love, the first Black Republican woman in Congress, will lie in state on April 6th with a memorial service the next day at the University of Utah. Get BIA News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
In West LA on the 10, eastbound connector to the northbound 405. There's a crash in lanes of that transition road, and the traffic is stop and go from Cloverfield on the 10 because of it. Chino Hills had trouble on the 71 northbound connector to the westbound 60. That's a broken down car. It's in the left lane of that transition road, and things are stacked up from Riverside Drive. On the 91 freeway eastbound past the 241, wreck in the left lane.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Ice Cube is adding a Los Angeles franchise to his new look Big Three basketball league. The team will be called the LA Riot. The coach will be former NBA player Nick Young. Ice Cube will have 8 teams in his Big Three league. All 8 will represent cities with NBA teams: Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Detroit, Houston, Miami, Washington, D.C., and the LA Riot. The half-court 3-on-3 competition will have a 2-month schedule this summer, beginning June 14th. This will be the 8th season for Ice Cube's Big Three. LeBron is bringing back his Mind the Game podcast with a new co-host, 2-time NBA MVP Steve Nash. The 51-year-old Nash is replacing Lakers coach J.J. Redick. LeBron and Redick started Mind the Game in 2023. The podcast had an average of 1.5 million views per episode. LeBron and Nash will make their debut on Tuesday, April 1st. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
On January 7th, 2025, the Eaton Canyon Fire scorched Altadena, torching everything in its path. Homes, wealth, and legacy burned in one night. But will Altadena rise from the ashes? I'm James Farr. On the Conversation Live Altadena Rising, we're chronicling the recovery, the resilience, and justice for the nation. This is the show of record, unapologetically progressive. We're not blacking down. So join me, James Farr, on the Conversation Live Altadena Rising every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific with the rebroadcast on Sunday at noon.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement. Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha, Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their programs. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are streaming and listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I have been thoroughly enjoying this conversation with Dr. Wylin Wilson. She is the author of a new book called Womanist Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health. It is also worth noting that she is currently the principal investigator for bioethics and Black Church, addressing racial inequalities and Black women's health in North Carolina's research project, which examines the potential of the Black Church as a resource in addressing the Black maternal health crisis in the United States. Talk to us about your upbringing in the Black church. It's very clear to me, not just in terms of your body of work, but in terms of this book that's getting a lot of buzz, that it's very much grounded in the Black church, the traditions of the Black church.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was one of the things that was really, really significant for me growing up was being a part of Black church community. My parents served in the church. My dad was a deacon. I grew up in a Black Baptist church, and my dad was a deacon. Mama was a deaconess, and so we were deeply, deeply embedded in Black church tradition. And one of the things that I remember the most, of course, is kind of, this life of service, right? Like my parents, they were always serving, not just the folk in the community, but folk, folk in the church, but folk outside of the church in the community. And the church was really, really centered on that service to folk in the community beyond the four walls, right, of the church. And there was something called the sick and shut in list, right?
Mm-hmm. We know a thing or two about this shit, the sick and shut in list. We know something about that.
Right. And so I always remember growing up seeing folk being on the sick and shut in list, and we would pray for those folk, during the service, but then after the service, the deacons and deaconesses that take communion and have communion with the folk who weren't able to make it because they were sick. Some folk on the sick and shut-in list were in hospitals, some were in hospice, right,
Mm-hmm.
or nursing homes and whatnot, and some were incarcerated. The sick and shut-in list included everybody. Some were in rehab centers, right, and whatnot, and that was a list that really was a call to action for folk in the congregation. You knew that you had a responsibility, and you knew that was your call. Your like saying, welcome. You are welcome also to contribute to this person's flourishing and their healing, and it was even in a small act. You could give a little phone call, because they'd often had a phone number there for you to check on folks. So you could give a phone call, or you could take a meal, right? Or you could go and mow the lawn if somebody, was incapacitated or whatnot. So that sick and shut-in list was it was so important. And as I, got older and started studying the Black church, I was, going around doing my research in churches around the nation. And that sick and shut-in list, it's still there. It's still going strong. Folks still, they still understand that to be a call to action on behalf of the thriving and flourishing of our communities and folk in the community. So I talk about that in the book. And I've taken this notion of the sick and shut-in and expanded it to the foot soldiers in the Black church, these African American women who did a lot of the, public health, I call it public health activism, right? And so these sick and shut-in women, they are shut into these economic systems, right? Shut in the healthcare system, which itself has historically been really biased against, folk who are disadvantaged, right? And so sick and shut-in is something that I have broadened to really look at from a societal level as well. And it's very important to do so because it's all, we are literally interconnected, right? In this serious, even ecological web, right?
I mean, I love the framing of this, right? Because so many of us can relate to it. I mean, you can't attend a Black church and not learn about the sick and shut-in list, right? It is a part of our tradition. And I've got to say, the way you laid it out is so beautiful. I don't think I'm ever gonna listen for the sick and shut-in list the same ever again. I've got to ask you, how are you leaning into the promise of technology? We are living in this AI era. We are the way in which we consume information and process information and co-develop information is being supercharged by artificial intelligence. The ethics of the deployment of that AI technology struggles to keep pace, though. And so, in what ways, are you embracing both technology and tradition in, your book, Womanistic Bioethics?
Yes. So, so wherein I don't really have a broad focus on technology. It is something that is so important, and it is something that I think we, especially in the Black church, we have to stay up on what's going on beyond the four walls, right? Spiritual, looking after our spiritual health is so important. And looking after the physical health, which a lot of Black churches have done a beautiful job of. A lot of Black churches have health and wellness ministries, right? And things like that. That is super important. But we cannot ignore technological changes. We cannot ignore this environment that we're in, and how technology is really shaping our lives, so much of our lives. And so that's one of the things that I think is so important for us to be aware of, and to even lean into, right? Because I know a lot of times folk, because of fear, right? It's because technology brings so much change, and because of fear, sometimes folk will, be resistant to changes. But I think what is important is to lean into, okay, what is beneficial, what is important, how can we use technology in a way that allows us to really care for one another better, right? That allows us to put love in action, in ways that we had not been able to do before. And so that's what excites me about technology, and that's what I'm hoping that we can help faith communities to really lean in, and also lean in, though, with clarity of thought, right? We lean in with our intellectual humility, right? Able to embrace change, but also able to have that critique that is needed, because just accepting things blindly and blithely, it does not work. But having the appropriate critique to say, okay, so how are these changes going to help to contribute to the flourishing, the thriving, and survival of particularly the vulnerable among us? That is really important.
I'm really moved by your optimism. For those that are streaming us live, I think your optimism sort of leaps off the screen. For folks who are listening in afternoon drive time in LA, the East Coast, and everywhere else, hopefully they can also hear the optimism. I think it's an optimism that we are all hungry for in a time such as this. And so in our remaining minute or so, I want to give you an opportunity to share what it is that is fueling your optimism in this particular moment, where a lot of people are scared. There's a lot of uncertainty, particularly when it comes to programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, programs that have been very much a part of people getting the health care and the supports that they need. And so give us a word in terms of what is fueling your optimism as you share your work and your witness in the form of Womanistic Bioethics, social justice, spirituality, and Black women's health.
Yeah, thank you for that. For me, I tell you, the ancestors, you know, I have been absolutely leaning into folk who've been here before, right? Who've been on a rough road before, been on a rough road and thrived. Our ancestors paved the way. I have absolutely been leaning into there's this legacy. I talk about the legacy of care, right? That's in the Black church tradition, and that legacy of care that we find. And mind you, when I talk about Black church tradition and all that, I'm not saying it's perfect. I want to be very clear. Our faith communities definitely have their problems. There's bad theology out there. There's some things that we need to really attend to and be held accountable for, right? And do better. But there's this beautiful legacy of care that absolutely got our communities, got our folk through the roughest of times in history, right? Before we even had Medicare, Medicaid, when we didn't even have hospitals because, you know, there were no real resources there, but also because there was a segregation, and so Black folks locked out of public facilities, even healthcare facilities. So that legacy of care in Black churches helped to start Black hospitals, right? And those Black women, those foot soldiers who were out there raising the money, raising those dimes, pennies, nickels, raising that money for to establish Black medical schools and Black nursing schools when Black folks were locked out of these institutions. There is such a grand legacy of care among Black folks and in Black churches and Black communities that I believe that I believe is, you know, worth us, you know, kind of going back to and looking at, you know, how did all that play out, right? Because folks had nothing, and built not just built things for our survival, but built things for our absolute thriving. And so my hope really does come from, you know, our ancestors, the legacy that we have. I mean, my God, we are standing on a phenomenal legacy of care as African Americans in this nation. And we didn't just care about our own. We cared about other folk. We cared about everybody. And so that's where my hope comes from, because I know it is in us. I know that power, that love is in us. And I know that that's what we can tap into. That is what, and I that's what we're going to tap into, because you know, the reality is we have to. Yeah. Given where we are, we don't have a choice. We are going to tap into that love and legacy of care, because we are going to continue to take care of each other. We're going to continue to thrive. I don't see the other option. Right?
Amen. There ain't no other option. You are correct in that, indeed. Her new book, Womanist Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health. It is available wherever you get your books. Dr. Wilson, thank you for your work and your witness and that extra dose of optimism, just to help get us not just through the week, but through these challenging times.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you tremendously.
You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, The Quiet Part Out Loud, when we come forward.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
This is the story of the one. As a quality technician in a food processing center, she knows that making the right call is the best way to avoid a recall. That's why she trusts Grainger's world-class supply chain to deliver the high-quality supplies she needs to help keep her production line, her equipment, and her customers happy and healthy. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You still thinking job change in the new year?
Yeah, I need something that's in high demand and more stable in this economy.
IT?
Yeah, cybersecurity, maybe even AI.
That's what I did.
Really? How?
Went to My Computer Career. You don't need any prior experience, and you could start your new career in a matter of months. A lot of IT pros go to school there, too, to level up.
Sweet. Are classes online or on campus?
Both.
Wow, I'll check it out. Thanks.
Make this your year. Take the free career evaluation now at mycomputercareer.edu. Financial aid is available for qualified students.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again, at work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text PEC to 321-321 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever, to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text PEC to 321-321. That's PEC to 321-321.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just a reminder about our new initiative, Fired But Not Forgotten, the Testimony Project. We want to encourage anyone that is a federal worker or knows a federal worker, perhaps especially even a Black federal worker, to reach out to us and share your story. These mass firings have really turned that idea of, the good government job. It's turned that idea on its head. We know that there are a number of government workers that are really disoriented from all of this. Folks that are in roles in our government that are pretty important. And so is your story. Email us at info@smileyAudiomedia.com. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com. You can share your story with us on the record or off the record. We are in the business of documenting as many stories as possible of folks who have been impacted by these mass firings. And we might even invite you to join us on air to share your story, because you're more than just an agency name. You're more than just a number. We recognize that each and every federal worker is a real person. They belong to a real family. They're a part of a real community. And a lot of folks are really hurting right now. And so Fired But Not Forgotten, the Testimony Project, is underway. Again, send us an email at info@smileyAudiomedia.com. You can also utilize the open mic feature on the KBLA app to reach out to us that way. Finally, in other news, USAID, the agency that until recently, led our international development work, our humanitarian work around the world. Played a very important role when it came to American diplomacy. Humanitarian aid goes a long way. Supporting the public health efforts of our allies, it goes a long way. And so when I see headlines like I did in the New York Times, which read U.S. to end vaccine funds for poor countries, I thought to myself, how is this good for American diplomacy? How does this further American interest? How does this make the world more stable? The Times reporting that the Trump administration intends to terminate the United States financial support for Gavi. That's the organization that's helped to purchase critical vaccines for children in developing countries, saving millions of lives over the past quarter century. And to significantly scale back support for efforts to combat malaria, one of the biggest killers globally. The administration has decided to continue some key grants for medications to treat HIV and tuberculosis and food aid to countries facing civil wars and natural disasters. But those decisions are included in a 281-page spreadsheet that the United States Agency for International Development sent to Congress Monday night, listing the foreign aid projects it plans to continue and to terminate. New York Times obtained a copy of the spreadsheet and other documents describing the plans. The documents provide a sweeping overview of the extraordinary scale of the administration's retreat from half-century-long efforts to present the United States to the developing world as a compassionate ally and to lead the fight against infectious diseases that kill millions of people annually. Put differently, this runs counter to the legacy of care that Dr. Wilson was just sharing with us. We should care about this. We should care about our federal workers here at home, and we should care about our friends and allies abroad, because none of it makes any of us any safer, doesn't make our communities, let alone our economy, any more stable. I know that for sure. When we come forward in our second hour, tap into my conversation with CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin, and of course, we'll unpack some of the day's trending headlines. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Maryland Congressman Kwesi Mfume has introduced bills to honor Doris Dory Miller, a Black Navy hero from Pearl Harbor, with the Medal of Honor and Congressional Gold Medal. Miller manned anti-aircraft guns despite not being trained, downing enemy planes during the attack. Black Fulton County, Georgia DA Fonnie Willis is facing a disqualification hearing as a Georgia Senate committee pushes for her testimony. The committee argues she waived